Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the MX Endurance Podcast, where we look at everything that's been happening in the world of endurance sports. Basically, Kona this week. My name is Tim Ford, and I'm joined by the penultimate legend, the sexy shepherdess, the sexiest voice in triathlon, who did not join me on the big island of Hawaii, James Bale Jimbo, Jimmy the Big Man. How are you, mate?
Yeah, I mean, there's fuck all else happened, is there really? I was trawling because I know that you were, it's early in the morning for you because you've done me a favor this week. So I was doing the show notes, and there isn't a huge amount to talk about other than the week you've had in Kona, is there really? You know,
Well, it's anything but
I'd
Kona, mate.
ask you
That's
how
all
you are, mate, but I don't give a shit. I wasn't there. I don't care how you are. I'm assuming you had fun.
It was
Welcome back.
it was hectic, to be honest. Like it's funny how a lot of people, when you tell you, I'm going to Hawaii for work, they're like, that'll be lovely. Oh, that'll be so nice. It's like the reality was, it was try to squeeze in some training, rush home, have a shower to stop being a hot, sweaty mess, rush out, go to a meeting, rush to another meeting. Like it was a pretty hectic week. It was good. Kona was fucking packed, mate. Like I couldn't believe how many people there were there. It was very, very different vibe to it's been in the past. But it was good. I think it was good to see the action back there.
In what sense was the vibe different?
In the fact that there were so many people around. Like I really
Okay.
thought it's how about just everywhere there's certain hot spots, I guess you'd say, in Kona, even before the race starts, where there's always a lot of people. Where there's an area where Lava Java is, Huggos is, that sort of strip where there's a lot of the time you see these famous photos of people running the oceans behind them. It's normally just that section there. It was absolutely chaos. Every time I went past Lava Java, which is like the famous cafe, I had one glass of sparkling water at Lava Java. That was the extent of my experience there. It was absolutely like packed. There was another cafe a couple of doors down that had a line of like 100 people every time I walked past. The cafe on Palani that I was going to a lot, I walked in on my last day to grab a coffee, and the line was literally 30 people deep. And I went, nope, I just got back on my bike and kept riding. I thought I'll come back on my way back. And then I think there was also there's a lot of people who had not been to Hawaii for the first time. Like it was, again, I always say, but every time I go to Kona or St. George or 70.3, you tend to see the same people there a bit. But because it's been a few years since it happened, and there's all these new people that have come into the sport, not just pros, but age groupers, there's a whole new wave of people there. And so there's a lot of people that I was talking to who were there for the first time. And
you've doubled up, haven't you? I mean, with the 2-day thing, they've doubled up. So they've not only doubled the athletes, but they've doubled the family that are going with them, the kids, the friends, the relatives, people that are going to go out there for that experience. So it's going to be a whole doubling up of the whole thing.
Yeah, no, it was, and again, I think for me this year, going there in a work capacity was different. And I mean, one of the perks of the job is you get the VIP, like almost all access pass. So I got to experience some things in Hawaii that I've never experienced before. Like I got to be right on the pier both mornings as the race started. Like that was like honestly one of the best things that's ever happened to me in the sport. Like it's they talk about the spirit of the island and all that stuff, and having the Hawaiian people do their native greeting and everything before the race starts at sunrise, it's like that was pretty cool. And then being
I bet that's cool there. I bet that's cool there because I was like, when we were in St. George and they did that at the finish line, I found it out of place, and I found it a bit cheap and a bit cheesy because it was like, this doesn't fit here, and so I'm glad to hear that it didn't feel like that when you're actually where that should be.
It's like, so I'm on the pier, right? So for people who audio listeners, the stairs that the people go in and out of to start the swim, I was probably 10 meters down the pier on the edge to that, and you're looking over the finish straight, which is the Lee Drive, and it's packed with spectators and packed with people because that's where you line up to start this, like the swim start. They all line up in their age groups down there. And then sort of in front of the finish line, you've got these Hawaiian people in their native attire with their horns, like the shells that they use and everything over this. It's again, Kailua Bay is one of the most beautiful spots in the world. Like it is truly a incredible spot for a race. And yeah, there was something very special about it. And that was really, really cool. And then that was probably the extent of the benefits for me, to be honest, because then I was just running around like an absolute mad person both days of race day. But
Did you squeeze the odd cold beer in various places?
oh, I had a few cheeky frothies, mate. I didn't, because I was staying like 10K south or 6 miles south of Kona, thanks to Bob Babbitt for hooking me up at the outrigger. So I had to drive everywhere. Although the alcohol limit I found out in Hawaii is like 0.08, so I probably could have had a few frothies and driven. I personally wouldn't have felt safe doing that, but I did sit down after the men's race with Joe and his family and had a cold beer over dinner. That was pretty good, and then hit the after party pretty hard on the Sunday night, which was actually a lot of fun. That was a good time. So I don't know if you can probably still hear. My voice still isn't great, to be honest, from screaming on Saturday. I was screaming like an absolute mad person riding down the Queen
we better
K.
get on with this podcast before your voice fails you entirely, eh?
Yeah, we should. So before we get to that, James, well, this podcast is the official podcast of MX Endurance, the world's premier endurance sports community, created by four-time world champion Chris McCormack. Jimbo, what's something you like about MX?
Fuck all, mate. I didn't get to go to Hawaii, so nothing.
You lived it from home, didn't you? You enjoyed it from home.
Yeah, I think that would obviously be the community spirit when the races like this is taking place. Being able to. I didn't actually watch because I was busy on the Saturday, so I didn't watch the men's. I did watch the women's on the Thursday, but being able to keep up the updates and messages, it was very useful across the whole thing, really.
I'll tell you something that is cool about MX. I shouldn't sound like I'm surprised by this because it's the reason I designed it. But for people who've seen our race kits, it's got this giant red X on the front and back of them. And the reason behind it was always that you want these things to be easy to spot. So when your family's spectating, they can spot you coming a mile away. There's 3 times in Hawaii that I spotted and went up and spoke to MX people that I didn't even know were going to be in Hawaii just because I spotted those kits from so far away.
It really does work, doesn't it?
It's such a cool
thing. It
really
does work. Yeah, it's when you're watching a race as well. When they're in a crowd.
They really stand out. I'm really happy with that. I got to meet Simon, Angela, and I'm having a mind. I'm sorry, Daniel. I think it was the third person. But yeah, it was good to see those guys out there, cheer for them and everything. And yeah, but let's get into it, mate, because we will talk to death about Kona later in the episode. I've got some stuff to discuss. I have thoughts, mate. But the first piece we're going to start on is not a great article, and this one comes from 220 Triathlon Kate Milsom, and that is that George Peasegood is in neurocritical care following a bike incident. An Instagram statement from Peasegood's girlfriend and fellow pro cyclist Frankie Hall, published on Sunday, the 10th of October, shares that Peasegood has had a freak accident while cycling with Hall the day prior, with no other parties involved. Hall goes on to share that Peasegood is being treated in critical care for a diffuse axonal injury, among other injuries, and is currently still unconscious. According to John Hopkins Medicine, diffuse and axonal injury is the shearing or the tearing of the brain's long connecting nerve fibers. That happens when the brain is injured as it shifts and rotates inside the bony skull. Now, we never like to hear about a member of our community getting hurt.
It's a horrible story to read, this one. Frankie Hall is someone who I've ridden a bike around a motor racing circuit before when she was part of Cat Matthews sub-7, sub-8 team. And so she's sending, we just want to send our best, don't we? This story hit home quite a lot because that is the same brain injury that I had when I had a bike accident when I was 14 years old. So I know the implications that come with it, but you can come back to a full recovery. So if you call me a full recovery, good luck.
Yeah, no, always terrible to hear about people having serious bike accidents. And it seems like there's a bit of a trend of it at the moment. It seems like every week we're doing this, there's someone has had a serious bike crash. I don't know what's
absolutely. And
I don't know what's in the waters at the moment.
It's terrible when a car or something's involved, but it sounds like this was just a freak accident, and it goes to show these things can happen when you're out and about. So it's worth taking care, but sometimes even when you take care, these things can just come and bite you. So all the best with your recovery.
Yeah, 100%. All the best. On to something a bit more positive now, mate. We're going to dip into Kona a little bit, then we're going to dip out of Kona, then we're going to come back to Kona and hit it hard. This is an absolutely incredible story that I'm sure most people listening are 100% aware of. And that is that Chris Nikic continues to break barriers with his Kona finish. I got this from Tri 24/7, Thomas Land. Chris Nikic has become the first person with Down syndrome to complete the Ironman World Championships in Kona, Hawaii, after a journey to the start line that has changed the perception of what's possible for intellectually challenged athletes. Nikic has had to navigate open heart surgery as well as multiple head and neck surgeries as he beat the odds and became an Ironman. The 22-year-old from Florida in the United States has used his 1% better foundation as a platform to show what is truly possible. He finished in a remarkable 16:31.27 after capping the race off with a 6:29.01 run split. The Central Florida Triathlon Club member competed in his first Ironman World Championships, made his whole team proud after a performance marked by fortitude and determination. Mate, this guy's an absolute legend.
Yeah, I mean, this is comes down to the core fundamental part of what Ironman's about, isn't it? You know, the motivation and seeing somebody like Chris become the first person with Down syndrome to compete at the Ironman World Championships is amazing, and hopefully it'll be an example to other people with, as the article says, intellectually challenged athletes to push themselves and go and explore what is and isn't possible, and we'll see more people on the start lines across the world.
One of the things from being on the ground that I heard a lot last week was there was a day where he was out on the bike. I think he went up to test the Harvey, the climb up to Harvey from, where is it? Wherever it is. And he got knocked off his bike by the wind. And apparently, and again, I'm just basically saying what I heard and saw on his social media stuff, that he was sitting on the side of the road in tears, thinking that he couldn't do this. And so instead of, backing away the next day, he went out and did it again to show himself that he could do it. I love that, mate. That you want to talk about the essence of this sport bottled. Forget the actual result. The fact that he can get like literally so scared, thinking he can't do it, and just go, no, I am gonna. Like, I love that. And I didn't get to see him finish, but you could see his team all around on race day, and everywhere they went, people were just like, Chris is a legend. Chris is an inspiration. And I saw him a few times around town and stuff, and guy's an absolute champion. So really, really well done. Some
more to come, eh? Much more to come.
Absolutely. There were some incredible results over the weekend, actually. And something that I've not seen covered, I think, enough, to be honest, is that there were records broken in the hand or the wheelchair category for both the men's and women's race. But we've got that here. The first one we got from John Levinson at Try 24/7. He says, Austria's Thomas Fruworth was also breaking barriers on Thursday with a new all-time best in the men's hand cycle division. When you consider that previous best was set by one of the greatest para-triathletes in history, Jets Platt, that's a big deal. Fruworth is a longtime rival of the Dutch star, regularly taking silver to plat in paracycling road and time trial events at Paralympic Games and World Road Championships. While the Austrian athlete's focus has been in paracycling, he's no newcomer to triathlon either, including previous Hawaii appearances in 2010 and 2013. He also raced and won at the delayed 2021 Ironman World Championships held earlier this year in St. George. Platt had set the previous record figures when he raced in Hawaii 5 years ago, completing the 2017 World Championships in a time of 8:41.47, which included a 53:14 swim, 5:25 hand cycle, and 2:19 racing chair marathon. Racing this week, Fruworth started his day with a 1:03 swim. It was onto the second discipline, however, where he really made up ground on those record-setting figures. He completed the 112 miles in a blistering 5:01.23. Again, mate, you consider hands only. Some of those climbs in Kona, that's mental. There was no backing off on the run either, with a 2:05.58 push in the race. Wheelchair putting the current men's hand cycle record into another dimension. His finishing time of 8:15.31 slashed more than 26 minutes from the figures set by Jets Platt. Stunning and well signed inside his pre-race target of 8:30. Now, I saw Thomas going out on the bike, and I didn't realize that he was just amongst the people, I guess. And I remember I was walking. I think I was heading up to Palani, and they're announcing that someone's finished. And this is like Chelsea and that are still out on the Queen K at this point. Like he crossed the line before anybody. It was absolutely crazy to see this performance. And again, very, very impressive. So congratulations, Thomas.
Ridiculous impressive, man. I watched the London Marathon a few weeks ago, and watching those, the racing chairs, how hard it must be to compete, because the hand cycle's one thing. They've got the gears, and it'll make it a little bit easier on the arms, but those racing chairs are something else when it comes to going up inclines and going up hills.
Well,
what a performance.
you want to talk about it because this next one I think is a shining example, and that's in the women's. Got this from Sean Smith at TriZone. Lauren Parker has returned to the biggest stage in triathlon come 6 years after she last raced Kona at the 2016 World Championships, then as an able-bodied age group athlete. Her mum was with her that year and was with her again this year. To have my mum here to see me race is pretty special. She was here in 2015 when I raced, so to have her here again is really special. To have my two great friends here as well as my handlers in transition and to have them to witness my achievement is really special. I had so much support from all the athletes and spectators. It was unbelievable how many athletes shouted out encouragement to me. It was really great. Despite just completing the toughest single-day sporting event in the world, there is no time to rest for Parker as she switches to the sprint distance World Championships in 6 weeks' time before starting her next big build towards the Paris 24 Paralympic Games. Lauren finished in a time of 12:20:35, nearly 2 hours quicker than she completed the race in St. George in May. I'm so happy that I was able to finish in a really good time. It's been a big day, but I'm just so excited that I was able to come here. It's been my dream for the last 5 years since my accident, and to come here and race as a para-athlete and do that today is just unbelievable. You can't put any words to the emotion that I'm feeling. Now, one of the things I saw, mate, with this was, and I'm sure lots of people have seen the footage of Lauren going up Palani Hill backwards in her hand cycle, because Palani is a bloody steep little climb. And Jan Frodeno was on one of the aid stations. So there's this video of Lauren, going up the hill backwards and Jan's like running next to her. It was unbelievable. Even trying to see Lauren get up that finish, there's a little rise up to the finish line. You could just see she put absolutely every ounce of effort into that performance, and to break the record by like 2 hours, absolutely amazing. And now she's a double world champion, the only person I think, or the only professional to do that this year.
It's astounding, isn't it? It really is. It's an entirely different approach to the sport, and it comes with such unreal levels of challenge when you look at what these para athletes achieve. It's remarkable.
No, great. Very, very, very impressive weekend of racing for our para athletes as well as our able-bodied athletes as well. This next article comes from Ollie Green at Tri247, and it's why I decided to give it one more year. Frodeno retains Kona dream. German legend Jan Frodeno has asserted that his dream of making his final professional triathlon at Kona remains very much alive. Following this year's disappointment, he admitted that 2023 will be his last season in the sport, and he's insisted that taking on Kona and potentially winning would be the perfect way to round off his glittering career. Yeah, absolutely, he responded when asked if he want to reclaim his crown. He said, somebody's got to win it this year. It's really important for me to know that I hate not being there because it shows me that I'm not ready to hang up the shoes. St. George is a beautiful race, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't have the same vibe. It's not the same illusion. It's not the same history and all that kind of thing. So that was the reason why I kept having this dream and this hope of coming back here and enjoying it a little bit fitter than I am now. And that's why I decided to give it one more year. Frodeno explained that it was far from a straightforward decision to carry on for one more year, with his wife Emma and 2 children playing huge roles in his life. You get to a different stage and have different priorities, he said. After hospital, I spoke to Emma and we had a family sit down. I was like, okay, I really want one more year. And 10 years ago, I wouldn't have cared the slightest what anybody else thinks. But I really did kind of weigh in and we made a family decision. It's a little bit different, and so priorities change. I do still think, however, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to cause an inferior performance on the other side of it. Frodeno also highlighted that there's a strong chance that his 2019 Kona course record of 7:51:13 is going to be broken this year. Yeah.
I added this in because I thought it was quite it was a good premonition from him there.
He said that such accolades as well as ever-rising standards in the sport are fueling his aspirations for next season. I definitely think the record here is going to fall. I think that's the good thing about records. It should be the thing that inspires everybody to look for an absolute limit and not just a daily thing. It always depends here on the conditions, but I do think the boys are definitely pushing the envelope. The front group is getting bigger and they're getting committed. The runners are getting stronger and it's just a natural development. And that's the kind of reason why I'm definitely keen to see if I can still do it.
Mate. Now, obviously, going into this, we were of the belief that Blumenfeld and Iden weren't going to come back next year because they're going to focus on Paris. But after this result, we've got another story later in the show, talking into more detail on this. But when I saw this article, I thought, well, we might get the Frodeno, Gustav, Blumenfeld matchup next year. What do you think,
mate? It's funny how quickly after the race, this is where the discussion shifted. Because I saw in Gustav's finish line chat where he's like, "Oh, I don't think I'm coming back here. This is too hard." And it made me chuckle because that's basically the exact same thing he said after his Florida. He's like, "Oh, this is too long. This is too hard. I don't think I want to do another one of these." I don't know, mate. I feel like Christian, I think, is probably going to fully commit to the Olympics. He wants that second Olympic title. But I also know though that like he wasn't very happy when I spoke to him after the race. He didn't seem like a happy boy. It's the first time I've seen him a bit. I wouldn't say he wasn't like, we're not talking about Christian being in tears or anything, but you know what Christian's like.
Yeah.
And he wasn't. He was just a bit like very serious Christian. That's not normally the Christian that I'm used to interacting with. Yeah, I think he'd like to come back and maybe do it again, because they were saying that it's like 3 weeks after the grand final, and Gustav's like, that's not enough time to prepare for an Ironman. Whereas Christian's like, yeah, I could maybe do it. I hope so.
Gustav. Come on, mate. You know,
it's just. I put a tweet out this week.
It's not for you. The WTCS series is not for you,
Give
Gustav.
it up,
come on, win some fucking Ironman, more Ironmans.
Well, I put this tweet that said basically, what do we have to do to get this to the race? And somebody's like, he's beat his record by 10 minutes. Why do you want to see them race? And I think the reason is I don't want this to always be I don't want it to constantly be a hypothetical. I want to actually have a line. Here we go. We saw it.
I want completion on this, mate. I want this to be. What do they say at the end of a relationship? You want closure.
Closure.
On this. I want to know. I want to know the answer, so that there's never a debate over it as the future rolls on. I want to see this race.
I don't think Frodeno would have won this year. Even if he was in the best form he could have been. The only difference I could see maybe was that he would have got out of that swim pack and pushed the pace a little bit earlier. But you had Christian and Gustav in that. Anyway, we'll talk about it. But I think Frodo could have probably come second. But I think Gustav, that 2:36, we'll get to it. But one of the other it sort of follows on quite nicely from the other article, is this thing that Tim Hammond from 220 Triathlon put out. And I just took a little bit out of the article to discuss. And he said, Frodeno said, Blumenfeld makes me lose sleep. Gustav's not as hungry. While he believes that the reigning former Ironman champion Christian Blumenfeld is more than capable of backing up his St. George win in May, he says that his training partner and 2x 70.3 champion Gustav Iden isn't at the same level yet. Gustav is physically in his league, but I don't know mentally. He's not as hungry, and I struggle to put them on the same page. Gustav's a great guy and a phenomenal looking athlete, and I do believe he has the potential, but he's got to prove it. He hasn't done it yet. He's won the World Championships that everyone forgets about. He gave an interview where he said that if I beat him, then I'm truly the greatest of the sport. I thought, I will beat you, but I won't tell my kids about it. He's not there yet. Christian is. Despite lauding their achievements, does Frodeno still think he has to take what it takes? Does he have what it takes to beat the duo and provide a glorious swan song to an already stellar career? Yeah, I do. I actually do. I do need the perfect year to do it, but I really want to give it my all.
Yeah, I just love the I will beat you, but I won't tell my kids about it, mate. That's the whole, beating you's not a story. Beating Christian's a story. Obviously, things have changed since he gave that interview, but it shows a good mindset that he's still there to win it, man. And I want to see him come and try. I don't think I want to see him win it even. Maybe I do.
I was at the post-race press conference with Joe, because Joe was top 5. And they asked if anybody has any questions. And I referenced that article and asked Gustav Iden if he has anything to say to Jan Frodeno after that. I said, Jan said that you're not on the same level as Christian. Do you have anything you'd like to, you haven't got the performance yet. Do you have anything you'd like to say to Jan? And then, I thought that was pretty funny. I thought it was just very good that he's like, I don't. It wasn't very positive. What did he say? I know that he said, we've got the training and stuff, so we know that we're on the same level. And then Tim Hammond, who wrote the article, he's like, I think he said mentally. And Gustav's like, so what? Jan Frodeno can read my mind now. I thought it was pretty good. Like you could tell that he was a little bit like, fuck you.
Did you speak to Frodo at all over the weekend?
Didn't even. The only time I saw Frodo was when he was volunteering on Palani. It's the only time I even came across him anywhere. He's like a ninja, mate. He's probably just like pops in and out really quickly. Didn't see him any. I thought he'd maybe be. I was at the Hoka after party. I thought he might be there. Didn't see him there. But yeah, I saw him on Palani volunteering. Which again, like, everybody was like, I was so impressed by that. I was like, fucking hell, how good is it, Jan Frodeno standing on Palani volunteering? I think it was Joe's like, it's like that's Jan. Jan's volunteering at that aid station. I was like, Jesus, that's impressive. Yeah, but no, I didn't have a chat with him. But I did like that he put that out. Yeah, I will beat you, but I won't tell my kids about it.
Yeah, because that's like the time Mo Farah beat me in the Bahrain 70.3. You know, it ain't a story for him.
Yeah, no. Same for you though, mate. You I mean, I didn't. I beat you and didn't tell my kids about it either. So
Yeah, totally.
it is though. It is interesting to see. I think again we'll get to it in the men's race. I have thoughts about those
We'll get there.
Norwegian boys.
Let's keep plowing on because I want to get to the meet.
Yeah, I do. So there's one more thing to get to before we get to Hawaii, and that is that World Triathlon Championship Series Cagliari 2022 happened. Mate, you put this in here. I'm going to let you lead this one because I'm a bit sick of talking.
Joyous. You passed it over to me. Yeah, so we're going to look at the women's race first. In the swim, Lopez was first to hit the timing mat after 1,500 metres in 1939, while Summer Rappaport, Beaugrand, Kingma and Sophie Caldwell with just about everybody else except Taylor Knibb were bunched up with her. On the bike, the short transition was executed cleanly and quickly by everyone, and a huge bunch left transition. The pace looked to be on from the start, but Knibb overcame a 30-second deficit from the swim and caught them by the third lap of 10. She hit the front, blew the pack apart, and on the fourth lap, it was a rare moment that she wasn't on the front for the rest of the cycle leg. The British trio of Taylor Brown, Caldwell, and Wall made the road to the front group of 11 athletes, but Potter and Beaugrand were dropped. By the time the leaders hit T2, the group had put 1 minute 44 seconds into the chase group, which contained Potter and Beaugrand. On the run, the group of 11 leaders was separated by no more than a second coming into transition, but it wasn't long before Taylor Brown hit the front along with Knibb and Emma Lombardini. By the third of 4 laps, Taylor Brown hit the front and stayed there to cross the line in front to claim another excellent victory in 2022. And she said, "I just tried to run my own race and tried to stay in contact with the bike group. Taylor made it really hard, but worked in our favour because we got a really good gap. I forgot how hard she rides, but it's good. She really gets the group going, and we're all trying to hang on to her wheel. I started speaking to the girls on the first 2 laps of the run. Let's work together because this could be the podium." On extended her series lead over Flora Duffy, who wasn't there today, she said, "It's all going to come down to Abu Dhabi now." The results being first place Georgia Taylor Brown, second place Emma Lombardini, third place Taylor Knibb, fourth place Taylor Spivey. And the current WTCS rankings standing after Cagliari. First, Georgia Taylor Brown on 3.925. Second, Flora Duffy on 3.482. And in third place, Cassandra Beaugrand in 3.181. So Georgia Taylor Brown has now taken the lead in the standings, but a slim lead it is, Mr. Ford.
Yeah, it is really going to come down to Abu Dhabi. We've got another round, I think, in Bermuda coming up. Is that soon? I can't remember when it is. Is it? I don't know when it is. But mate, Georgia Taylor Brown, what a year she's having.
Yeah, I mean, she's certainly looking like the class of the field in terms of consistency, being able to. I know that she didn't being able to race it at Super League, race it at the WTCS, bring that form. That form just keeps on coming. She doesn't seem to have a huge amount of dip. She's liable of the odd accident on the bike, and not really sort of big accidents, just slow moving mistakes. Other than that, she's really showing her form this year.
How about the men's?
On the men's race, the waves picked up for the men's race. Alex Yee appeared to not be handling the conditions well when he was 3 seconds off the pace at the halfway point, but he settled into the second lap, and the deficit to the leaders was 32 seconds when he exited the sea after 1,500 metres. On the bike, DeVay and Hauser escaped out of transition, but their lead lasted just 1 lap before the tracing crowd were with them. Leah Berger attacked off the front, hoping someone would join him. It took another 2 laps before Jonas Schomburg tried and failed to do so. By the halfway point, the group of 28 were together with another huge pack containing Yee just 14 seconds behind them. Brownlee took his opportunity to attack off a dead turn, and after 2 laps of working, they'd established a 30-second lead, and the 2 groups behind had combined as they came into T2. Brownlee surged out of transition and ran a solo 2.4-kilometre lap before Yee started to eat into the lead of his countryman and caught him towards the end of the second lap. Yee pulled out on the third lap, holding his leg before quickly getting going again, with Brownlee doing his best to follow. They kept their advantage over the others to claim gold and silver for Great Britain. Yee said, "I had cramped pretty much the whole time after the first lap. We had to work so hard on the bike to get to the front, and it's hot today. Maybe I just need to go back and learn something from today." Explaining why he stopped, he said, "I thought I'd invest in the little gap that I had to take some time. I was in pain the whole time. Referencing the crash 5 years ago, Yi added, "I was thinking about this place and how much it means to me. I'm over the moon to do it here. It's just a fairy tale, thanks to the people of Cagliari." Brownlee said, after the crash in Leeds, this was a trademark Brownlee performance. He said, "I backed myself for dictating the race instead of being a passenger. I saw the opportunity."
It's like Brownlee says that?
Yeah, I know. That was weird.
This was a trademark Brownlee performance.
That's a strange, talking about himself in the third person, which he didn't do. That was just an error on my part. I felt confident on the bike the whole way through. I'm back to being able to ride my bike after the crash in Leeds. It's taken me months to get a bit of confidence back, and I was enjoying it. I was actually really enjoying the bike. He added, "I can remember the last time I was at a World Series podium. It's nice to be back." So the overall were Alex Yee in first place, Jonathan Brownlee in second, Manoa Massasas in third, and the WTCS standings after Cagliari is Hayden Wild in first place, 3.850, Leah Berger in second with 3.493, and Jelle Gaines in third with 3.102. So Hayden Wild has still got a substantial advantage. Alex Yee, just out of interest, is in fourth place with 3,000 points. So he's 850 points behind Hayden Wild.
Hayden's not racing Bermuda, I know that.
Yeah.
Again, Alex Yee wins. Shocking. I'm shocked.
It's good to see JB back though, isn't it? Doing something and being. The problem is he just hasn't got that run pace at the end of the race now to compete with Alex. If Alex is in touching distance, then staying with him is difficult for someone like Brown.
For anyone, I think is more appropriate.
Yeah.
For literally anybody at the moment. I'm curious to see how this plays out. Like I think that Abu Dhabi race could end up being it's all on the line sort of thing because it's double points, I believe, in Abu Dhabi, and Hayden made the choice because I know it's only your best number of results. So Hayden's not doing this or Bermuda. I want to give a little shout out to Tyler Mizlichuk, who also crashed again. So I know Tyler dropped a bike in Toulouse, and then a week later does it again here, which really sucks for Tyler. I know that he's just. Mate, the bad luck's going to end at some point. I promise you, champion.
When's that run of bad luck going to end for this man? He needs
the
Olympics.
Good
races.
The Olympics in Paris, he's going to win it. That's the good luck, man.
Yeah.
No, it's brutal. Hey, like sometimes you just that bad momentum goes with you. It's brutal. So
let's get into what's the big story, mate? What's the big story for this week's?
Well, that's the race, isn't it? That's it. That's it.
Yeah,
thanks, guys, for listening. If you want to find out more about MX Endurance, head to MX Endurance.
Always a pleasure.
Kona, mate. Kona happened. Finally, we are back on the Big Island. We had 2 days of racing. We're going to start with the women's race first. Now, you watched this race, I believe you said. I
did. Now, do you want me to go through this one? Shall I do the women's and you do the men's?
I think. Do we need to go through it, or do we just want to have a chat around? Like we can go through it. How about I'll do the women's because I have a lot more to say about the men's race.
Okay.
Now we're on Zoom. Hopefully this time it keeps working and it doesn't shut down every 2 fucking minutes. But we do this for the content, James, because the people were banging on the doors going, "Where's the episode last week?" So we can't miss it this week, mate. We're going to talk about the women's race for the third time. We're going to go through.
Let's try again, shall we? Jesus.
Okay, let's do this. Lucy Charles was first out of the water with the group of Lauren Brandon and Fenella Langridge and Rebecca Clark close behind her. The big piece of news, though, was the fact that Annie Haug, Laura Phillip, and Daniela Reif all gave up nearly 7 minutes in the water. So there was a huge gap coming out of the water. After a quick transition, it didn't take long for Langridge to bridge up to Charles-Barclay, and the two Brits would then lead for virtually the whole of the bike leg. As things settled down, Sodaro, Monch, and Sarah Crowley were all part of the chase group, but drama then hit in the shape of several drafting penalties. Crowley was first into the penalty box, but the biggest name to suffer was Germany's Phillip, who was said to be in tears as she saw her race chances take a huge hit thanks to a 5-minute sanction. All the while, Charles-Barclay and Langridge swapped to the lead, but then both were overhauled around 5 miles before T2 by Reif, who had whittled away all of that 7 minutes deficit thanks to a clear fastest bike split of 4:36.11 in what were relatively benign conditions. Reif was first in a T1 with LCB just 17 seconds behind and Langridge still smiling, despite losing close to a minute over the closing miles. Onto the run. Lucy Charles had made up 11 seconds to Reif in T2, and she powered past the Swiss star early on the run. But no one was moving faster than Sodaro, who was first past Reif after 4 miles and then eased in front of Charles-Barclay going up Palani. She was also showing real poise taking on fluids at aid stations. Just before the halfway point of the marathon, Sodaro had opened up an advantage of 2 minutes over Charles-Barclay. Ominously, it was Haug who now moved in a third with a 4-minute 13 gap, while five-time winner Reef was going in the opposite direction, now over 6 minutes adrift despite a lead in at T2. But rather than wilt under the pressure, Sodaro rammed home her advantage, approaching the 20 miles point. She had moved over 5 minutes clear of Lucy Charles-Barclay, with Haug a further minute back. That pair would have an absorbing battle for the runner-up spot, with Charles-Barclay just holding on for yet another second place. She was nearly 8 minutes behind Sodaro, who crossed the line in 8:33.46. So our results are: in first place, Chelsea Sodaro from USA, 8:33.46. Second place, Lucy Charles-Barclay, 8:41.37. Third place, Anne Haug, 8:42.22. Fourth place, Laura Phillip, 8:50.31. Fifth place, Lisa Norton, 8:54.43. What are your thoughts, James Bale?
I didn't see Chelsea Sodaro coming, mate, and that is an absolute smash fest, isn't it? Taking the lead on the run and then putting 7 minutes into the second place finisher. To see Reef go backwards like she did on the run was unexpected as well, when she'd had such a dominance on the bike, making up that deficit on the swim, coming into T2 in first place and leading on the run initially. To see her capitulate quite like she did is surprising, but the biggest surprise has to be Chelsea Sodaro, who is now undoubtedly, leading point on the BMC Pro team. What an amazing athlete she's looking to be.
I think, I think I mentioned in passing, I think Chelsea Sodaro was like a wild pick for top 5. She was very good in Edmonton, and I honestly never would have picked Chelsea Sodaro ever for the win. And it's no disrespect to her. It's just you looked at how I wouldn't have picked anybody but Daniela Reef coming into this race, to be honest. And again,
Same.
I just want to. I'm about ready to give up, mate. To be honest, because fuck, every time I seem to pick or not pick her, it goes the opposite way. I mean, I was with Tim Hemming at the dismount line in T2, and we saw them come out of that. And I was like, it's Danny, mate. And he's like, "Are you sure?" I'm like, "Dude, yeah, it's Danny. Like, she's leading the race. She knows how to win this race. She's just gonna go do her thing." He's like, "Oh, Annie Haug's not that far behind." I was like, "Oh yeah, maybe we'll see." And it was, I don't know, like a couple of minutes later when it's like Lucy Charles in first. I was like, "What the fuck? What's happening here?" Like, okay, wow. And I think I saw him like a while later. Oh, he was on Palani, because I was on Palani when Chelsea passed Lucy. I saw that happen, and Tim is like, "Danielle O'Reilly for sure thing, Hammer." I was like, "Fuck off, Tim, you bastard!" Like, yeah. But yeah, mate, there's so many incredible performances. I think to look at what Chelsea did on that run, like, that is seriously good running. And I was talking with Chris yesterday, and he was saying that Dan Plews had been chatting with Chris months ago at this point. He's like, "Chelsea Sodaro is going to win Kona." Chris is like, "Mate, that's a big call. Like, Danny's good." He's like, "Yeah, but Kona ain't St. George, mate." So I think Dan, one of the best coaches in the world, who sort of has been, people have been very focused on the Norwegians lately, whereas Dan has a very, very proven track record of success, shows that he is one of the best coaches in the world. And I love it, mate. I love the story, the fact that she's a new mother, that she had, had a child 18 months ago. She's on the BMC team, like, which is, very, Bob at BMC is very good at identifying talent and finding those people who are going to go well. Incredible. What did you think about the performance?
Yeah. I think it's just astounding, isn't it? Like you say, the whole story is there, and to be enjoyed and savored, really, because I even love it down to the detail that she wasn't really a pick for anybody to win this race. Like you say, you mentioned her in passing as a possible top 5, but to come on and put that sort of performance and that sort of dominance down, it wasn't like she had led on the bike, come in and held on to the run, but to come in behind on the bike like she did, and then to put that sort of run performance in, not only to catch and pass the leaders, but to put 7 minutes into second place. Astounding. But I mean, also good to see Lucy Charles-Barclay getting another second place after the year that she's had and the comeback from injury that she's had. I mean, there's a good feeling wrapped up in this whole race, if I'm honest. There isn't anybody on that finishing top 10 who doesn't deserve to be there, and then anybody else who I'd rather see there.
Yeah. I mean, some other things that I think are worth discussing, and it sort of applies to both races, but it's worth bringing up now, is the drafting penalties or the penalties or the amount of penalties that were given out?
Yeah, I don't know a huge amount about this. I wasn't there on the day, so I mean, take me through it. What do you think the drafting? How do you think it went down? Do you think it was over the top?
There's a few things. Again, I haven't actually watched this. I was on the ground. Like I was, seated in passing and more sort of following the race and talking to people and things like that. But the first sign when we saw how many penalties were given out was like, this is a good thing. And speaking with some of the men on the Thursday, were like, this is good for us because it's going to make some of those people who push the envelope nervous ahead of Saturday. But talking with, I'm not going to name names, but talking to some of the athletes who got penalties and their coaches and stuff, there was a lot of displeasure about how things were done. Like no warnings being given. And I always think at least give a warning first. The big factor that I think is applicable to both days is the number of motorbikes. Now, again, I know
Yeah, I saw a few pictures of this.
Yeah, people saw Joe's post that he put up on his page basically saying get rid of it. I know that a number of the pro men very unhappy and they all emailed Ironman collectively and were like, guys, get them off. Like get them off because this is going to ruin the race. But yeah, like hearing that Laura Phillip was in tears, I think that was pretty true. And there's a lot of anger. There's a lot of anger from some of the pros who got those penalties. I mean, again, I don't know. I haven't seen it whether they were drafting, but I still feel like maybe there should be a. I don't know whether I like the penalties, and I think what they were more for. My understanding is because again, even on the I was having a meeting with Selfish during the women's race, so that they had the race on in German. And the German commentators were saying that there was, I think Laura Phillip got a a blocking penalty, which is when that's the like cutting in when you've not passed the entire group. And we were all talking on the Sunday night at the banquet, like that rule's kind of unclear, hey, about at what, there's meant to be 12 meters between each athlete, and if there's a row of 12, you've got to pass the entire group before you can cut back in. And they were saying though, but like, what if there's a gap of 20 meters between 3 and 4? Are you able to then slot in there? Like it's actually kind of a bit unclear, and they said that there needs to be more certainty around that.
I saw that in the men's with Max Newman and Ditlev at one point where he tried to pass, there was a motorbike in the way, and then he had to drop back. And you're like, if you're going to put motorbikes in the way, there has to be some nuance to this.
The counter argument that I had with a lot of the pros to this was we keep criticizing Ironman for their broadcast. And I feel like the reason there were so many motorbikes this year was to up the broadcast. Like, I mean, you watch all reports I've heard is that the broadcast was very good this year. I think the commentating maybe wasn't that great and there was a lot of ads, but the actual way they showed the race was, from what I've heard, very, very good. And it's that sort of chicken egg situation a little bit. The pros want fair racing, but they also want to grow the profile of the sport. In order to grow the profile of the sport, you need to have more bikes on course with cameras. Bikes on course with cameras means that the race is less fair. So there's no perfect solution, I don't think.
No.
But I mean, I'm not against penalties. I like to see refs enforcing the rules and making sure that the race is fair, but I still think maybe a warning of some form, or make the first penalty a stop start or a minute or something, and then the second one's 5 and then the third's disqualified, because a 5-minute penalty ruined the race in a lot of ways for both the men's and women's. I think we saw, not that the races were bad, and I still think we probably see the same people win, but a lot of the drama was taken out of both races, I feel, because Laura Phillip, mate, coming out of T2, she looked the best. Like I saw her, I was like, shit, she looks great. And you take away that mental, you take away the 5-minute gap and the mental strain of knowing that my race is almost over, and like a lot can change. But I think Chelsea Sodaro had an absolutely incredible performance, and yeah, mate, as I said, I feel like after this weekend we have to throw out the rule book about what happens in Kona, because I did see a lot of people saying, and I never want to be that guy who's like, oh, well, history says you can never win on your first time, and we know it's happened before. But we saw a lot of rookies do very, very well in Kona this year, and I feel like this weekend we've seen, like, triathlon's gone to another level. This weekend has shown that this is no longer that like sport where you can be in your mid-20s and just sort of have a go or whatever. And like, I mean, Chelsea was a runner first and stuff, but it's become a properly professional sport, and this I think showed it. But yeah, Chelsea was incredible. Lucy, again, speaking with Lucy and Reese after the race, like it was all plus for Luce. Like she wasn't even expected to get there. So to get there and come second without an ideal prep, like she's going to win this race one day. 4 seconds is absolutely, but she's almost like Mark Allen. You know, Mark was second how many times before before he finally did, and then he went on one, like what, 7 of them. I feel like Lucy will win this race. I think she'll probably win it a few times. But yeah, Daniela, I don't know, mate. I was shocked by Danny. I really thought
Have we heard much feedback from her
I think
after
she
the
just
race?
said I wonder. I mean, sort of watching it, she clearly pushed the bike, and
Yeah.
I think a part of that is she didn't want to be too close to some of those women. I feel like she wanted to have a gap over maybe Anne Haug in particular. But I mean, Anne Haug rode incredibly as well. In fact, I think Anne came out and said she rode too hard and that's why her run wasn't great. But I like that. That's what I mean. You see, this is the thing about Kona. It's not an individual time trial like in a lot of other races. Like you have to race against the other athletes who are out there. You have to be reactive. You have to, take swings because you don't know what's going to happen. And that's probably why we saw Danny do this. I mean, she really committed to getting to the front of that bike, and then I think she probably expected to get there a bit sooner, and she probably wanted a decent gap on the run. And I think it probably just should be paid for it, to be honest. Like that's me sort of interpreting what happened. Some other standout performance. I thought Fenella Langridge was incredible, mate. I wouldn't have expected her to stay at the front of the race as long as she did, and to finish 6th, amazing. I still think Lucy Charles's performance, considering everything that's happened this year, is fantastic. And yeah, Sky Monch. I mean, people forget Sky is her first time racing Kona, and every time I saw Sky, she didn't look like she was having fun of it. Like she wasn't in a good place. I had good chats with Sky. I love Sky, but yeah, mate, it's not an easy race, and Chelsea did incredibly. Like it was really, really. She dominated this race. Like dominated.
Yeah, it was. It truly was, and even to the to sort of how well she dealt with the aid stations and took on fluids. I mean, she approached it like someone who'd raced this race many, many times.
It was one. I was with Joe. I spent a lot of Thursday with Joe Skipper, and Joe was saying when he first saw Chelsea going through one of the aid stations, he's like, "Oh, she's in trouble. Like if you have to stop at the aid stations, that's not. You don't do that because you're confident. You do that because you're worried." And afterwards, he's like, "No, like she knew what she was doing. Like she was again raced incredibly maturely. I think that's the thing about it. This was a very mature." Like you say, like a person who's raced this race before, and the fact that she was stopping at the aid stations and still increasing that gap is mate, just so impressive. So Chelsea Sodaro, 2022 Kona champion, world champion, and yeah, mate, the again just great for that BMC team. Like I really think to win Kona and have Chelsea do it. Like it's great for them. They are so important for the sport to see what they do and the way that they support those developing athletes, and to see them get that success with Chelsea. Like she's helped to put that team really on the forefront of a lot of people's minds. So amazing stuff. The men's take us through it, mate.
In the swim, Anger officially was the first out the water in 48.15, virtually alongside Laidlaw. But they had plenty of company with 19 athletes separated by just 15 seconds. Right in the thick of that group were pre-race favourites Blumenfeld and Iden, also involved with Kiwi pair Brandon Curry and Carl Smith. The second group of athletes began to exit the water around 1:20 off the pace, and it included Rudy von Berg, two-time Kona King Patrick Lang, another big Danish threat, Magnus Ditlev, and American Ben Hoffman. Further in the field, there was another group of big names all around 4:30 off the pace. In it were Matt Hansen, Chris Lefferman, Cam Worth, Joe Skipper, Sebastian Kienle, and Lionel Sanders. On the bike, Swede Jasper Svensson was fastest through T1, and he headed out onto the pivotal bike leg in front, with Newman quickly went to the front, followed by Svensson and Joss Ambo. Curry, Blumenfeld, Iden, Smith, and Colin Chartier were all in close attendance. Up at the front, Laidlaw took over from Newman, who remained close behind, but with still just over a minute then to the first chase group as they reached the 30 miles on the bike leg. That group still contained the likes of Blumenfeld, Ditlev, Iden, Beckengard, and Tim O'Donnell. The first big move of the race came as the field approached 50 miles on the bike, as the phenomenon Ditlev blasted forward to eradicate the gap and take over the front from Laidlaw and Newman, with Blumenfeld and Iden struggling to keep the pace behind. The Norwegians were quickly 30 seconds adrift off the Scandinavian rival as he looked to lay down a marker. Anybody who thought Laidlaw's moment in the blazing sun was badly wrong. The Frenchman took the lead again and started to take chunks out of the chasing pack. He was simply devastating on two wheels as he really poured it on during the second half of the leg. Laidlaw's lead grew at every split, and he was 6:15 clear of Iden and into T2, with Blumenfeld and Newman both 6:21 back. There was disaster for Ditlev, who had picked up a 5-minute drafting penalty and served it before he could enter T2. Laidlaw's lead remaining at more than 6 minutes as he headed on to the run, with Blumenfeld and Iden running together in second and third. It seemed the dream matchup everybody had dreamed of was now on. Newman obviously hadn't read the script, though, as he passed the Norwegians to claim second spot before they bridged back up to make a chasing pack of 3. At this stage, Iden and Blumenfeld had to be heavily favoured to finish 1-2 for Norway, but there was still work to be done. They were cutting into Laidlaw's lead, but it was already down to 5:16, with under 4 miles covered. They moved clear of Newman in the process. What seemed inevitable when the marathon began didn't seem like that anymore as they entered mile 18. Blumenfeld and Iden then cut his lead down to 2:23 as Christian injected a fresh pace into proceedings. The tension was unbearable. Mile 19 brought fresh drama as Iden stepped on the gas to drop Blumenfeld swiftly, going immediately 30 seconds clear of his friend and compatriot. He now trailed Laidlaw by a shade under 2 minutes with just over 7 miles remaining. Iden, looking fresh and strong, cut a big chunk out of Laidlaw's advantage to halve it to just under a minute as they moved to the end of the mile 21. Blumenfeld's victory bid appeared to be dead, though, as he now trailed by 2:24. The pass by Iden now appeared inevitable as he had Laidlaw clearly in his sights on mile 22, and he closed in rapidly. The gap was just 23 seconds at 2:21.4 miles. Gustav finally claimed the lead on mile 23 as he passed the gritty Laidlaw to take up the running, giving the 23-year-old Frenchman a high five and a pat on the back and a thumbs up as he went past to show respect to a remarkable performance from his rival. Now, the only other remaining questions were how far Iden would beat the existing Kona course record, that 7:51.13 set by Jan Frodeno in 2019, but whether Laidlaw could hold on for a deserved second-place finish. The first was answered emphatically by the brilliant 26-year-old from Bergen as he stopped the clock at 7:40.24. His marathon time was another Kona course record, an astonishing 2:36.15. The victory was a sweet one after illness had forced him out of the delayed 2021 running of the race in St. George in May on the very eve of the event. Laidlaw recovered from the disappointment of losing his lead immediately and hung on superbly for a second, with Blumenfeld third. Newman was terrific fourth for Austria.
Australia.
So the result.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, Australia. Sorry. The results were first place Gustav in 7:40.24. Sam Laidlaw second in 7:42.24. Christian Blumenfeld in third place in 7:43.23. Mate, tell me things. You were our man on the ground. You know shit. Tell me things.
Yeah. So this race I followed. I mean, I did not follow the women's race, but this one I was very attentive to. First thing I remember was being how shocked at that group, how big that group was out of the water. I couldn't believe that Christian and Gustav made that lead group, and it was like I said, 19 athletes, like 20 athletes, and I remember thinking, shit, this is going to be a day if we're going to have that big a group on the bike. Like those guys behind are going to have to put in some work to close that gap. And then we saw again carnage on the bike. Speaking with both Florian and Magnus about those penalties, I think what Magnus told me, he still doesn't really understand what happened. He made an attack going up Harvey to drop Christian and Gustav and bridge up to Sam, and got to special needs, needed his special needs, and it wasn't there. So he had to stop for like a minute to actually find his special needs to get what he needed. And by that time, the guys had gone past the end, so he had to then burn more matches to catch back up to them. Gets on the back and gets pinged straight away. And he's like, I've just spent a minute coming up. Like, how can I haven't been drafted. I've just caught up. So he was pretty unhappy. And I was at the penalty box when Magnus was there, just like screaming at him, like, stay calm, stay relaxed. And you could tell he was very agitated and very upset. I know Florian was the same. He's put out some posts on social media that he's very unhappy with it because, again, I think if you look at two athletes who probably wouldn't need to draft to be those guys. But again, I haven't seen enough. There's not enough footage really, considering there's so many cameras out there, to find out exactly what happened. But then on the run, Uh, yeah, mate. I couldn't. I think everybody said they expected Sam Laidlaw to blow up, myself included. Like I was like, yeah, he's done. He'll get to
Oh,
like
same.
6 miles and he'll be start walking or something. And I think he didn't win, and Gustav was incredible. But I honestly think Sam almost had the performance of the day, mate,
Yeah.
because nobody expected that. And to do what he did after the couple of performances that he's had recently and the shit that he's copped, like he has made a statement. He has made a statement like, I am serious. I am here to be an incredibly competitive guy. He absolutely walloped Cam Worth's bike course record and then held on for a very, very decent run. But then you've just got those pesky Norwegians, mate. Now, I cannot believe how well Gustav ran a 2:36 marathon is unbelievable. And one of the absolute highlights of the day for me. So I when they got on the run, I was following the athletes, mostly Joe and Magnus, around the course. And I was right at that spot in the energy lab when Gustav made his move on Christian. I saw it. So they came up the hill, they go up towards the Queen K, Chucky Yui come down, take a left, and they go back out to get back out the energy lab. And the first time they ran past, the gap was maybe 5 or 10 meters. And then 300 meters later, he had 30 seconds, a couple hundred meters almost on Christian. And Christian looked fucked, mate. Like destroyed. Like I've not seen I mean, I have. We've all seen Christian, that look on his face. But I remember thinking, yep, this is it. Like that's Christian Day's done. And I was there with Joe, and I remember screaming at Joe, "You're in 8th place, Joe. You've got 3 minutes to 5th, and Christian's fucked. Like, go for it, son. Absolutely go for it." And then to see just that performance by Gustav Iden is something really, really special, mate. Like I said before.
Did he look as relaxed as he always does throughout the whole thing when he was
Every time I saw him, just cool as a cucumber, mate.
Yeah.
I mean, you watch the finish line. He's like goes back out. He's he's celebrating. He's everything. He's hugging Sam and everything. And then you've got Christian who finishes, and like Christian was in medical, mate. And I caught up with Christian in the recovery area probably an hour after he finished, and he was still bright red, and he had like the balls of sweat all over his face. Like that's not normal. Like I really think Christian suffered, mate. Like we know that people like to say Lionel suffers. I think Christian Bloomfield is possibly the toughest athlete in this race, because he went to places that I don't think even he thought he could go. He didn't seem happy, I guess. But again, we know that Christian's slogan is "It hurts more to lose," and it certainly seemed to hurt Christian. But I just think that Gustav was incredible, mate. And I mean, some other things worth noting. I remember seeing Lionel come out of the swim like very, very low down and thinking like he's going to have to work with his boys. And almost instantly, that group with Joe and Sebi and everyone had put 40 seconds into Lionel. And I thought, okay, Lionel's doing that. And he'd said it in the days before that he wants to do an ITT, like an individual time trial. And I just thought that was a mistake. On a race like Kona is so strategic, and you have to be so reactive to what's happening around you. I didn't think it was going to work for Lionel, and we saw like Lionel was in the miles behind, mate. Like, and I know that he's put out a video. I haven't had the chance to watch. I'm very curious to hear what Lionel's thoughts are about the race, but I'm very disappointed because I thought Lionel was gonna. I feel like Lionel's been doing such good stuff. I think working with Miguel's been so good for him. To see him just not feature, like that's the thing. You could have removed Lionel Sanders from this race, and you probably wouldn't have noticed. I think this island scares him. I think that island really has. You've heard him talk all in the lead up is about how he's walked here, He doesn't want to walk. And I feel like he's scarred a little bit. Colin Chartier, another guy that a lot of people were talking big for. I knew that he had a rough week in the lead up to this. Braden Curry, we expected to see a lot of DNF'd, I think. Daniel Beckergaard. Daniel didn't look good. I was at the transition in the morning, and Daniel looked nervous. Like Daniel looked really, really nervous. And Daniel is obviously, we both really like Daniel. We know Daniel quite well. He didn't look. He was very focused, but not good focused. Almost scared focused a little bit. And I remember going, what's happened to Daniel? And I realized that he DNF'd. I was pretty upsetting. And some other things, Sebastian Kienle was exceptional, mate. Like, it was so funny giving Joe the splits, going, Joe, X amount of time to Sebi, or once Joe had passed Sebi, okay, you've got a minute on Sebi, keep going, Joe, like, catch him, and then Sebi, I'm like, go Sebi, like you can't help it,
You can't help it. No,
you almost felt bad, like I felt bad, almost like.
You're right. Sam Laidlaw is up there with the performance of the day, but my performance of the day goes to Sebastian Kienle, mate.
Yeah.
Simply for a different reason. It wasn't about the win. It was about, showing what he's capable of and showing that he's his time. I know that times are different and conditions are different, but his time wasn't that far off Frodo's previous record.
No.
I love it. I love it. It was great to see him. Great to see him perform like he did.
The other athlete that I have to, and I'm not being biased here, but I think Joe was incredible. Like Joe got out of the water, 44th position or something, and made his way up to 5th. And I know Joe's he has a little bit mixed emotions that he'd like to be, he'd like to be up the front. And that there's the discussion around motorbikes, which I think, watch the race, you can see that they definitely play a factor. But like following him around the course and giving him splits and stuff on race day, and that moment where I said, 3 minutes to 5th, fucking go for it, and he went for it. Like, what a warrior, mate. Like, Joe is such a warrior, and I feel like if he can work out the heat a bit better, and I know Joe agrees with this, like he can make those top 3 in this race. Like, he's tough as nails. And Magnus, I think if Magnus hadn't have had that penalty, I think that penalty definitely got in his way and messed his head a little bit. But as he was coming out of the energy lab, he was in a world of hurt. So to go sub-8 in Kona on debut after a 5-minute penalty as well, I think shows the class of athlete he is. And Magnus Ditlev's going to win this race one day. I have
he is, without
no doubt in my mind. But yeah, mate, there was a lot. There was a lot to take away from that race. Like I said, real change into the guard.
Absolute changing the guard. I'm with you on that. I think, like you say, with both the men's and the women's races, seeing the rookies perform like they did, and I just think it's a weekend we'll look back on in many years' time. I think, well, that was when some of these names came to the fore.
I wonder. I mean, the next thing we've got here that you've put in is going to be really interesting, and that next thing is, will they be back? Because this is what I'm quite curious about. So,
well, let's have a chat around it.
Let's do it.
220 triathlon from Tim Hemming. Will Iden and Blumenfeld be heading back to Hawaii next year? Newly crowned Ironman World Champion Gustav Iden said he's highly unlikely to return to defend his crown in Hawaii next year. The training partner, Christian Blumenfeld, could be tempted. It doesn't really fit my plan, Iden said. The World Triathlon Grand Final is 3 weeks before Kona, and 3 weeks of preparation is maybe a little optimistic even for us. My main goal now is Paris 2024, where Christian won his Olympic gold, and I really, really, really want mine, so I don't see it being in the plan, but we're full of surprises. It's 3 weeks between then, so I think it's doable. I have to remind Gustav, I have a ring here, and I want one from Kona too. That was Blumenfeld added that at the end. Having clinched the Olympic title in Tokyo last year and won 2021's delayed Ironman World Championships in Georgia in May, Blumenfeld came into Saturday's race as many people's favourite. But despite finishing 7:43.22 with a 2:39.20 marathon, the 28-year-old had to settle for third behind Iden and France's Sam Laidlaw after a grueling contest that left him carried away on a stretcher. So it sounds like Iden is very focused on the Olympics, but Blumenfeld could be tempted, mate, as you said earlier in the podcast. I want both of them to come back. What are you talking about? You don't win this sort of race and think, no, I won't do that next year. I'll have a go at Paris, which I may or may not be competitive at in 2024.
Maybe this is one of the side effects of the PTO paying so deep, is that we've now got an athlete like Gustav who's won how many $100,000 races recently, because the money is no doubt better. We know the money is better winning Kona or doing long course triathlon than it is in short course triathlon. So you've had Gustav who's come and done 1 year. He's made all this money that he's like, okay, well, this will get me through to the 2024 Olympics. I can focus on the passion project, which is getting that Olympic gold. And then I'll come back and I'll do it again for the money again. Like, maybe they need to pay less so that an athlete like Gustav's like, shit, I need to go back and win Kona so I make another $125,000.
So we might get Frodo versus Blumenfeld next year. We might not get Frodo versus Blumenfeld versus Eden.
I think it's probably the other way, to be honest. I just have this feeling that Gustav's gonna. I love you, Gustav, but you're not that good at short course, and you're not bad. He's not bad, but he's
not bad. He's just not. He's not there.
he's a middle distance, long course athlete. And yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Again, if he wants to go to the Olympics, I get it, mate. The Olympics are the Olympics, and he's probably only got 2 more shots at it. And the thing is, it's not like he's going to get. I don't know. Hey, it's. I don't know.
Anyway, I think the sport should do everything it can to get those three racing each other next year.
Yeah, 100%, 100%.
And I think Gustav, mate, love you, man, but come on.
The Olympics are a year later. You've got a year. Just secure that qualification spot, and then you've got a year to prepare for the Olympics, mate. That's enough, isn't it? Surely.
Just keep winning Kona over and over again. You set yourself up for life, bro. Yeah. So the next story. How are we doing for time?
Just quickly, I just wanted to ask one last little thing about this, because I don't know if we discussed on the podcast, but we sort of had the discussion around if Christian did win Kona. That's basically, he's automatically then he's part of the conversation for greatest of all time. He didn't win Kona. He's won St. George, but he hasn't won Kona yet. What do you think this does for Christian's legacy? Do you think this is a bad thing? Because I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it shows that he's a little bit human, to be honest.
And I don't think this is a bad thing. I think this is legacy building.
Yeah.
This is part of the narrative. I think if he'd won it here, then we'd have been in the conversation immediately, and it would have been like, right, yeah. But I think this is legacy building. I think this shows
make him hungry.
Yeah, make him hungry, and it's part of the foundations that are going to build that later narrative that's going to come. Because I don't see this being the end of Blumenfeld's.
He'll win this race. I have no doubt in my mind. Christian Blumenfeld's going to win this race. We're going
to see races for years to come between these guys, and it's going to be fun.
I know it's going to be good. It's going to be good. The last little one I know you put on quickly is just to touch on was the fact that Cam Worth was shocked at how triathlon's moved on. Again, at 220 Triathlon, just this little bit, he said, that's the best performance I've ever had there, and I wasn't anywhere near it. He said, I rocked up and I wasn't expecting that. To rub it in further, Worth also 5 minutes shot off his own bike course record by Sam Laidlaw, who rode a 4:04:36. He said, I love it. You can come here to race and make a name for yourself. And he did that at another level. The sport has moved on. When I went back to cycling, the sport had moved on and I had to adapt. I haven't raced many triathlons the last few years due to the circumstances. I wanted to have a better swim today, but hats off to everyone who finished in front of me. I just need to go away. It's pretty simple what I've got to do. A bit more triathlon training, a bit more swim training at least. But I'm really happy to get to the best that I could with today, and that's all you can ask for on the biggest stage. So I love the fact that he went back to cycling, and cycling moved on, and he had to adapt, and he's come back to triathlon, and triathlon's moved on, and now he has to adapt again.
I know, but the man can do it. That's the point. That's the point of this whole article. The man can do it. He went back to cycling, having had time off to go to triathlon, and he had to adapt. And the next thing you know, he was a super domestique, riding for Ineos, one of the best teams in the world, dragging them at the front across some of the biggest races. Now he's come back to triathlon, and it wouldn't put it past an athlete like Cam Worth to adapt again, to be able to do something different.
The only Cam Worth
thing, win Kona ever, but he's going to be a player.
We've not seen this Cam Worth in Kona before. He was very serious, mate. Like we didn't see. I watched his Breakfast with Bob interview. He was very serious. There was none of that normal smack talking stuff. Like he took the race very, very seriously. I don't know what that was about, but he was. I think he was still great. He still put in a rock solid performance. He looked good on the run. Every time I saw him running, he looked really good because he was around Joe and Magnus. So I was sort of with him a fair bit of the day. But yeah, mate, Kona, it's done. We have to wait another year for another one. But what's next?
Welcome to the down low on the PTO. Just a quick one this week, really, mate. Just to look at the rankings. Now, the rankings irritate me again. I'm irritated by the rankings because on the men's side, Christian Blumenfeld is now the number one PTO ranked athlete on 118.71. Gustav Iden is number 2 on 117.11. Magnus Ditlev is number 3 on 113.04. Sam Laidlaw is 4th on 109.34, with Lionel Sanders in 5th on 107.51. On the women's side, Anna Haug is in first place with 117.06. Daniela Reif is in second on 115.32. Ashley Gentle's in third on 113.54. Lucy Charles-Barclay in fourth place on 109.60. And in fifth, Laura Phillip on 109.38. What the fuck is Christian Blumenfeld doing ranked above Gustav Iden on the PTO rankings? And what the fuck is Anne Haug doing ranked above? Well, what is this? Tell me how this is the craze.
I love that you finally come over to my side of it.
Yeah, I'm with you now. Yeah, I don't want to be the voice of this segment anymore.
I I think I've gotten to a point where I accept what it is now. It's this 12-month thing, so it's the best 3 races. Kona's only one of the 3, so the others are obviously stronger. But I still just think it's like
It's optics, mate.
Gustav Iden just wins the race, the most competitive race we've seen, the fastest, breaks the course record by 10 minutes, all this stuff, moves up to second place. It's like,
Yeah,
I still feel like there has to be, and I know that they give you a 10% bonus or whatever it is for whatever, but they have to weight these races more heavily. There has to be some factor that it can't just purely be based around on race performance. There has to be something about the field.
yeah.
They have to work out a way to weight these races more heavily. I don't know what it is. I still just, yeah, I don't know, mate. I'm just like, yep, they're there. Okay, yeah.
I mean, I know these rankings will balance out over time, but I just think the optics are appalling.
Or they need to not update them as often. Maybe they make them updated like every 3 months, like some sort of thing. So it's not like a couple of days after Kona and suddenly like that. Maybe that's the problem. Because I want to see them update frequently. But then when this happens, I go, maybe they should have just let that.
Yeah, it makes me go like, grr. I mean, good to see Magnus still in 3rd place, obviously, because, we love Magnus.
But even Joe went down a spot. It's like, what?
Yeah, and Chelsea Sodaro, having just won Kona,
Number
and
6.
run is now 6th on the women's side with Annie Haug in 1st.
Like there's lots
There
of
isn't-
people. Yeah,
It's not making much sense to me right now. The PTO world rankings aren't, in this moment, in my mind, reflecting where the current athletes are ranked in the world. But it will balance out over time. So we know that. But come on, it's just annoying.
I love it, mate. I love it. No, I was curious to see this and to see the way the points should go. And I like, again, I love Magnus, but you'd assume that Gustav's race would probably get more points than Magnus's Roth performance this year.
Yeah, agreed.
And I've not looked in depth enough, but like, if
I
Magnus
don't
has got
think
this
it is.
crazy number of points, you think Gustav should get like 200 points for that race? Like,
Yeah.
he ran a fucking 2:36 in Kona, mate. He won like
Yeah, he put the course record
10 minutes.
out of sight.
Like,
So, surely he's well under the fucking ideal race for Kona, isn't he?
what was it? Let's find out. What was the? You keep talking. I'm going to look up what the ideal.
Wow.
Was
What else shall I
the
talk about?
AIT was 7:55.12. So Gustav earned 120.79 points with the bonus. So you got 132.87. So he gets the best. So this is what I mean. They get a best full distance bonus of 10%. But the PTO race, you got a PTO 2 of 5%. Shouldn't there be another? So it shouldn't just be the full distance plus 10%. Shouldn't there be like a World Championship
Yeah, maybe.
bonus or something?
I just think, it makes no sense. It made no sense back when we were talking about it previously, when I think it was Christian, wasn't it? He wasn't. He had.
I think it was more than his Challenge Roth points, mate, by the way. I'm just having a quick
okay.
look. So Magnus got 129.42 points in Challenge Roth, and Gustav got, with the bonus, 132.87. So it is now okay, good. That's all right then. It is the most points.
All is well with the world.
Yeah, there we go. There's one little thing. Because, again, I think that's fair. Like, this is, we talked about Jan's 2019 race being a masterclass. This was a masterclass. Yeah. Actual masterclass by Gustav. Well, James Bale, next time we want to get you to Kona, and the way we're going to get you to Kona is for people to go to mxendurance.com/podcast, where they can sign up to support the podcast. That's what's going to get you on the plane to Hawaii next year with me, and we can actually create some podcast content on the Big Island. If you guys want to do that, we're recording a bunch of episodes with Chris this week because we've missed the last month. So I'm with Chris next week. We're going to get those episodes out. We've got some new partners coming on board. We've got some exciting things on the work. It keeps us doing this podcast. It gets us to places like that. mxendurance.com/podcast for as little as $3.40 a month if you go annual, or $10 a month if you go month to month. Gets you the entire back catalogue of content as well. James Bale, if they want to find out other things about MX, what do they need to do?
If you want to find out more about MX Endurance, head to mxendurance.com or search MX Endurance on Facebook or at MX Endurance on Twitter or Instagram. If you want to follow me, I'm at bale.james85 on Instagram, or you can follow Tim at tford14 on Instagram. Jump onto iTunes, give the show a review. You can do it in the podcast app, and it's really useful and easy. If you like what we're doing, tell a friend, help us grow the podcast. If you've got any thoughts, queries, questions, or criticisms, send an email through the podcast at mxendurance.com.
Jimbo, a pleasure. Looking forward to getting stuck into this again, moving forward, mate. We're going to get some guests on. I spoke to a few people who are going to come on the podcast and all that sort of stuff. So
Ready
good
to
times
come,
to
eh?
come.
Lots of exciting stuff to come.
Thanks, Jimbo.
Take care.